Hello Anthony, thanks very much for letting me come into that lesson. It was really great. I really enjoyed that book that you read actually, with the pairs and the rhymes, and I hadn't seen that one before.
No, it's a poetry anthology we're working on at the moment, so just trying to get them to understand sort of, verse and things. It's quite interesting what they come up with.
And they seemed to enjoy the rhymes, didn't they? They were starting to join in with them really quickly when you were...
Yeah, I think some of them were familiar, with one or two of them, but what I was really concerned about was maybe perhaps they would change some words and some playground versions might find their way in, but yeah.
Well, you did well. I enjoyed it. We've got some time together now till about 11 o'clock, haven't we?
Okay.
Yeah? So just run through what we're going to do for that hour. Obviously, what you say to me today is confidential unless we agree together to take anything any further. So we'll have a chat about the lesson. And I've written down loads of things here that you did really well in the lesson, so I'd like a chance to feed them back to you. Okay. Well, then we'll have a chat about the area that you said earlier on that you would like to talk about with those three boys and the difficulty with
that would be useful, yeah.
And towards the end of the session, I'll give you a bit of time just to think on your own about everything that we've said in the session, so that you can decide what you might want to take forward and change in your practice in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Let me start by saying a couple of things that I've noticed that you did excellently in the lesson, because sometimes we don't notice the things that we're doing, we don't realise that we're doing them, and until someone has the privilege of observing, they can tell you what it is you're actually doing. One of the things you did was you welcomed them a lot when you were at the door. You were using a lot of non-verbal cues, really smiling, and a lot of kind of just chat with them. How did break time go? Did you have a nice Did you have a nice time out in the playground? That kind of stuff, and that really shows your relationship with the pupils.
Yeah, I mean, well, thank you. I mean, I guess, like you say, you don't often hear positives.
That's true. Did you know that you were doing that kind of stuff, or was that?
Oh no, I think you just do it.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think about, I'll go around and give somebody a thumbs up, but I'll probably just part of who I am, really.
Yeah.
Try and be as positive as I can. There's the Dean, there's Josh and there's Sean, who I personally feel are quite challenging, and what that tends to result in is I feel that I'm ploughing in a lot of attention, a lot of focus on those three. You were sat in the room. I mean, what's your opinion? What's your impression of do you think I'm losing the rest of the class?
Well, what I'd say is that those routines were really helping most of the children do the right thing most of the time.
Okay.
There was those kind of the 2 or 3 kids that you found that were quite hard, and as you say, quite a little bit of disruption going on. But most of the kids, as soon as you wanted them to go to their tables, off they went. As soon as you asked them to stop, they stopped.
Okay. So are you? So routines. I suppose routines do help, don't they?
Yeah. Well, there were the routines that I noticed this morning that it sounds like you hadn't done consciously. You'd just kind of set up because you'd seen them over the years, or...
So perhaps making those things more explicit, or...
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a little bit about your beliefs, Anthony.
Okay.
If I draw a scale here of... say 0 is where they've never do what you ask them at all, ever. And 10 is the opposite of that, where they always do everything you like, absolutely. Now, give me an indication where you would place your class now on that scale.
So 0 is they never do
anything you want them to do.
And 10 is they're doing it all of the time?
All the time, yeah. Where would you place your class now?
What, today or generally?
Yeah, generally.
A 6.
Right, okay. So most of them would be doing, is that 6 the right way out?
Yeah, you're doing very well. That's very impressive.
Writing numbers upside down. So that was today. Okay. Most of them doing most of the things most of the time. Yeah, is that how you describe a number 6?
I would use the word most, with the obvious exceptions of my particulars, my particular chaps. Whom I have to say I'm very fond of, but do drive me insane.
So tell me what's going well at a 6. Some of the things that they're doing.
Those 3 boys or the class?
Yeah, the class. What's putting them at a 6?
They're following instruction. I don't expect them to do it first time. I expect them to follow it maybe 1 2 times of asking. At the end of the day, we all need reminders, don't we?
Yeah.
They're listening carefully.
Where would you place them in September, Anthony?
In September?
Yeah, when you took over that class.
4.
Right.
4. They weren't.
So somewhere down here.
Certainly weren't as good as but that's obviously with those 3. Yeah, 4 for the most of them, because they have. Yeah, I suppose looking at that, they've actually come quite
well,
way.
yeah,
really,
because
haven't
obviously my next question to you is that's brilliant. Well, you've obviously done lots of things, haven't you, to move them from a 4 to a 6.
Never thought of it like that, actually.
What are those things? It might be really useful for us to tease out those things that you've done that have moved them from a 4 to the 6.
I think I take your point about routines, although I'm not explicit enough about them now, perhaps. It might be something I think the routines, having clear routines is helped.
Because you said you did that at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of the things.
Setting some clear rules,
Yeah.
but involving them in the rules, and I think.
Yes, well, you said that earlier about how they were.
Something we've done for the
involved
first time this year, and setting rules with them very much. And so, I mean, I've wanted to do it for a number of years, but it's always been you give them the rules because they're the school rules. You know, we have golden rules, and that's what everybody has. But I think making them quite personal to them this year has really, really helped.
Yeah, so they understand them a bit better, don't they? No.
I suppose actually just trying to have good positive systems in the class, really.
What you find then is that most of the class follow most of the routines most of the time that you set out.
Yeah, and I think again, you know, obviously, like I do sort of put Dean, Josh, and Sean as a separate thing, but most of the class do actually follow the routines. So yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, they do follow routines. Yeah,
that's great. Tell me a bit more about Dean, Sean, and who is it? Josh?
Dean, Sean, and Josh. Well, I kind of suppose that it's constant disruption. It's not following instruction. I just don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with them.
You're finding that's not working.
And as a result, I feel like I'm losing the rest of them altogether.
Right. So your usual tactics that you'd usually employ, you don't feel they're getting through to these 3 at all?
No.
No. And it sounds like it's using quite a lot of your energy to work out what you're going to do with them and to address them in the classrooms.
It's very tiring. It's very, very tiring. It's a drain. And, you know, I suppose part of me, not only is it draining, it's incredibly challenging to me, because like I would say most teachers, I like to think the one thing I can do in my classroom is manage children and have good relationships with children.
Yeah.
But I don't feel I'm getting there with these 3.
Right.
And I find that personally quite challenging.
When you're in the classroom and that is kind of obviously making you fairly anxious, you say, and it's making you quite tired throughout the day, how do you think that's affecting your behaviour with those 3?
I think part of me says that because it's taking so much time, because there's so much anxiety in the way they make me feel challenged, I think sometimes I feel a little bit of sort of a real negative feeling towards them,
right.
Which isn't fair, because I do actually like them, and on an individual basis, I'm sure you've heard this loads of times, but on an individual basis they're lovely on a one-on-one, but get them collective in that group, I suppose frustration is a word that comes to mind as well with those 3, because on a one-to-one you can do some really good work with them.
So you feel quite frustrated and you feel quite anxious about what you're going to do with them, and frustrated. But I have to say that when you did talk to each one of them in the lesson, you did have a great conversation with them, and they were laughing and they were all doing that pairs work, weren't they? They weren't necessarily doing it all at the right time, those 3, or when you'd asked them to on their own. But when you were doing it with them, they did really well, and they were coming up with the rhyming pairs
on a one-to-one in the classroom. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because the frustration is, of course, I've been saying this to people, and people have been saying, "Oh no, Anthony, you'll be fine. You can carry on." It's not like that. It is a real issue in the classroom.
So it sounds like you've sort of fallen into a bit of habitual behaviour, where you're behaving some way and they're behaving some way, and that's what happens when you get into the classroom. You all start behaving in that certain way.
Yeah, I suppose on reflection, I think I probably am different with them. I think I'm probably very different with them on an individual basis, and in a whole class situation. I think on an individual basis I can be quite low key, and I think I can be quite positive and humorous and use humour. But I'm just very, very aware that I'm anxious about trying that in a whole class situation in case they take advantage of that.
Right. Well, let's think about those exceptions then. That time when it does work with them. Tell me what you're doing when it does work with them. Even if it's at the tiniest sort of way possible, when they are best.
When they're best, there's no audience. There's no other children, or if there are children, they're only immediately either side of them and they're engaged in something. And it's very much just me and either Dean, Josh or Sean.
Right.
This, I think, probably... Yeah, I think probably actually, yeah, that's the time when it works best. And it's usually just a very quiet, subtle word, or it can be like a little cue, or it can just be I go and stand by them, something like
So
that.
that's what you're doing?
Yeah.
So you'd just be near them, would you?
Yeah. Yeah, and also probably...
Not necessarily talking?
No,
No.
and probably something like, you know, I don't know, well, it's going to sound really funny now, but how you getting on Sunshine, how's it working?
Oh, right,
Quite
so
low-key
just
like
some
that.
kind of...
Try to chivvy them on a little bit.
Kind of quite a matey, friendly kind of comment.
Yeah.